From training camp.
You guys are fired up and ready to go to work.
To the preseason. Through the playoffs. And into the offseason.
To be able to get the best players, it's a critical time for us.
It's always Colts season. This is Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen.
I'm not sure it'll ever end. That's certainly a thought I had as I watched that field goal go through the uprights yesterday afternoon. It continues in Jacksonville. Good Monday morning to you. I'm Kevin Bowen, Eddie Garrison. As always, this is Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen, recapping, what seemingly is certainly the same end of the movie. The plot's a little different, but I don't know. There are a lot of elements yesterday that I thought, boy, I feel like I've seen this movie, frankly, in Jacksonville before. 37-34, just a really critical loss in the division. It's amazing to me, Eddie Garrison. We sit here and the Colts have now won just 4 of their last 15 games in the AFC South. And then, of course, that streak. I don't know, maybe because I grew up in this market, I've kind of always, AFC East days are very, very faint for me. It's like, damn, this is where the Colts are at within the AFC South right now. And certainly yesterday, just a horrid defensive effort. We'll get into all that. Joe Flacco, I thought very, very commendable. And now week 6 into Tennessee, the Colts go as a slight favorite. Plates a couple teams coming out of a bye coming up here the next 2 weeks, Titans and Dolphins. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm still riding off the high of last week's news as a Reds fan of them hiring Terry Francona. That's about the only thing that went positive last week.
Tito action.
Yeah.
Tito action, yes, says you and I, both Reds fans. Very, very happy on that end. All right, let's get a little overview of yesterday. Sequence, when did it really change? Obviously, the end of the first half was a bit of a change. I thought after that Nick Cross pick, I thought that was an opportunity, Eddie, at 13-10. Could you do something with that? I thought that was a gift from Trevor Lawrence. Mm-hmm. Okay, what can you do with it? You go 3 and out. Flacco misses downs on that 3rd down. And then remember the big punt return? I feel like that was kind of a little play where, Jacksonville hadn't been moving it maybe as easily as they had for long stretches at that point.
As you usually say on Twitter, I haven't seen you do it yet. Circle that sequence. I haven't seen any of those from your at Kevin Bowen X handle.
I need to get back to that. We always do it on the pod, though. That was something I circled. Then Tank Bigsby runs over Nick Cross and threw Chris Lamont for the touchdown there. And then 2nd and 24. I just I can't believe 2nd and 24 ended with Christian Kirk 61 yards.
I can.
I mean, yeah, that's, boy, that if you aren't going to cry, you might, well, if you're going to laugh, you're going to cry at that one. 2nd and 24. If you give up 15 there, that's 3rd and 9. So, I mean, just unbelievable. That is what happened there. But again, to see the Colts now having lost in Jacksonville dating back to 2014 is truly, truly astonishing. They should honestly put a wing in Canton for that because no team has been worse in the NFL in the last decade than Jacksonville, and yet here are the Colts. And, CBS panned to the full stadium shot at one point. I mean, there's a couple hundred people in the upper deck. It's this is the place they're losing. It's not Arrowhead. It's not the Superdome in prime time. It's not Seattle in of all the quarterbacks, certainly, and the final winless team in the NFL. So, I'd say last thing, Eddie, I thought the final drive kind of summed everything up. Joe Flacco and Alec Pierce are doing everything they can to put together one of the finest quarters you're ever going to see, and you get hope. You're tied. Mm-hmm. And your defense gets one more chance to right all the wrongs. I mean, think about that. If you make a big sack, if you get a big, just a stop, frankly, force the game into overtime, you're singing a totally different tune at 3-2. And I didn't think that was a crazy drive by the Jags. Just kind of methodical, 11 yards here and 4 yards here and 9 yards here. And, Christian Kirk, we could use a, mini chunk here. They're not going to guard him. A couple of missed tackles for good measure there. Boom. They then, kick that field goal for the win there. I just thought that was a very fitting day for the defense to end like that.
A couple of notes from the loss. That is now 10 consecutive road losses to Jacksonville. Now, I say road because 9 of them have been in Jacksonville. 1 of them came in England in 2016. Trevor Lawrence, career high 371 yards passing. That is the 6th most in a game this year, Kevin. Number 7, Caleb Williams against the Colts. It's the third consecutive game now where Jacksonville has scored 30 points or more against the Colts. They have done that 3 times against other teams since the start of last season. And Trevor Lawrence was just pressured once on his 34 dropbacks. So let's transition now into what you didn't like, and we'll start with the defense after hearing some of those notes from the loss.
Eddie Garrison, the only time Trevor Lawrence had to be picked up off the ground was after a QB sneak. Was not sacked, was not hit, as you just pointed out there, pressured un time. I mean, the stats are mind-numbing. 37 points to a team that had been averaging 15 per game. You mentioned the yards, 497, the most that the Jags have had in 5 years. Right now defensively, you're 25th in points allowed. The Colts, 28th each of the last 2 years, 25th this year, and you've only played one top half offense, and that was Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And Green Bay, Jordan Love, Malik Willis, slightly different teams.
Yeah.
But to your Lawrence point, what worried me entering this game is like the next 3 weeks. Lawrence, Levis, Scoop Huntley. Lawrence has done it though in the NFL, and he's done it against you.
Yep.
And I had a big focus for this game, and why I initially picked the Colts, and then I did change, as I kind of warned everybody on the Wednesday pod. I was feeling like I might. The give no hope was a big emphasis for me. And look at your opening drive. I mean, you can't script it any better. I love getting downs on that linebacker there to get the 3rd and 6. You overcame, I thought, a head-scratching penalty on top of that as well. Just a big play there and consistent, methodical, in rhythm, up-tempo drive from Joe Flacco on that passing offense. But then I thought that first Jacksonville drive, that was what I was worried about. I know Jacksonville didn't score on that drive, but Lawrence completed some balls. Mm-hmm. And he didn't look like the 50% dude that we're used to. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh boy, is he starting to feel confident? And then all of a sudden that drive turns into 9 of 10 was the start that he had. Again, he had been a more inaccurate passer than Anthony Richardson.
I would love to see what Trevor Lawrence's stats are versus zone coverage versus man coverage.
Yeah, it's probably ugly. How about this for you on the Lawrence part? 57 career games for Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
His 3 highest completion percentage games of his career.
Yep.
All against Gus Bradley and the Colts.
Yep.
Like, I think I've stressed this enough, but just to stress it again, my overarching issue with this sort of defensive approach is you allow struggling, inconsistent, bad quarterbacks to have a chance to find success. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Lawrence did, I thought, in the first quarter. So, Eddie, what happens? He completes 9 of 10, and now when Press Taylor's on the sideline saying to him, hey, I feel like this is our chance to take the shot to Thomas. Now Trevor's saying, yeah, oh yeah, I can hit that shot. I mean, he's been wildly inaccurate on those types of balls.
I mean, hell, we could have hit that shot
but to be fair,
leap open.
Right, to be fair, it's a coverage bust, but it's also Lawrence hitting him in stride. And then it's him hitting Christian Kirk in stride on 2nd and 24. And those plays now become, I would say, better possible, more possible, because he settles into the game going 9 of 10. And he's able to feel more confidence than he had the previous weeks. I mean, you saw the CBS report, even after that first drive, he's throwing the iPad. Like, there's still frustration there.
Oh, yeah.
But yet you couldn't build on that. And I think your inability to set the tone defensively early on, it injects life into these quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And belief. And if you believe, now all of a sudden you feel like you can write some checks in the 3rd and 4th quarter that maybe you haven't through the first 4 weeks. So
just to compare how Lawrence is stacked up against the other 2 divisional opponents, against Houston and Tennessee, against the Colts, he's completing 72.6% of his passes, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 5-2 against the Colts. Against the Texans, he's completing 59.7%, 7 TDs, 8 interceptions, 2-5 against Houston. And then Tennessee, 67.6% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 7 picks, 3-3 against the Titans.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing. The pass rush, library quiet. It's you can point to personnel. I'm sitting there watching Sunday Night Football, and they list all the Dallas dudes out on their D-line, and they sack Fields 3 times and hit him 8 times. Week 2, the Colts had Kwity Paye. They had Tyquan Lewis. They had Kenny Moore. Buckner, yes, he was limited snap count wise, but he still was playing. You didn't sack or hit Malik Willis in that game either. And if you want to play devil's advocate, whatever, Malik Willis dropped back, whatever it was, 16, 17 times.
14.
In that game. I think at 14 attempts, I think a couple scrambles. So, outright dropbacks. Yesterday, Lawrence, 34? I don't think he had a single scramble. I think both of those runs were non-scrambles. But
yeah, he had 34 dropbacks.
34 dropbacks, that's obviously a big, big number. And, I can't blame the weather. I watched Jacksonville get after Flacco. It just – you got to manufacture a pass rush. You have to. Shane Steichen found a way offensively without a backup, with a backup quarterback, with a backup running back, with a backup center to have 34 points.
And then a backup guard.
Right. You have to manufacture that. So I just thought defensively, the Colts are the slump buster. They are the, hey, boy, your midlife crisis, come to our retreat for 3 days and you'll get your life back in order. That's what the Colts defense is.
Yeah.
Joe Mixon showed it. Josh Jacobs showed it. Caleb Williams had easily his best game of that first quarter of the season. Justin Fields, second in career high in passing yards, second most he has had, and then obviously yesterday with Lawrence. So
I've got a long list of stuff like that on my sheet over here, Kevin. So if you want me to hit on all of them, I can.
It's ugly. It's become way too much of the norm. And the other thing I would add defensively is what has always frustrated me about, and this dates a little bit back to Eberflus, but certainly under Gus Bradley, is I feel the Colts struggle to get off the field defensively in a traditional, efficient manner.
Yes.
And by that, I mean 3 and outs. Maybe they only get 1 first down on you. The Colts right now allow the most yards per drive defensively of any unit in the league. So what does that do? Even if those drives don't end in points, Eddie, it flips field position.
Oh, yeah, your offense is starting within their own 15.
So now a 30, 40-yard drive has flipped it, has changed some things. And after that Nick Cross interception, that would have been a great time for the Colts to potentially flip it. If they can get a first down or 2 there, now all of a sudden, maybe that punt return isn't as damning as it was there. So tackling issues certainly was there, and, just kind of take a ticket on the coverage bust. And I don't want to hear from anybody right now the Colts secondary is overperformed or whatever. This is exactly the secondary we thought we'd see.
Yep.
Again, you can point to all the Stroud had an incredibly efficient week 1.
Plus you had Mixon going nuts, so they didn't really have a chance to test the secondary.
Right. But literally every week. Every single week you have had something from a high efficiency passing game against you. And then obviously Williams and Fields and Lawrence all had the big yardage, but all of them were a part of those busts. How many times did you see Blackman looking at, Flowers, or Blackman looking at Jalen Jones? Or, again, Flowers and Cross clearly had an issue there on the Brian Thomas play. So, yeah, just you had some personnel losses. They should not and cannot explain 37 points to that offense. That it's a day when you have to rely more on scheme. And you obviously didn't do that.
So Tank Bigsby joined the list of players to have career games against the Colts this season. 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was his first career 100-plus yard rushing game. Brian Thomas Jr. recorded his first 100-plus yard receiving game, and we've already talked about Trevor Lawrence with his career high in passing yards. Just for comparison, Tank Bigsby, Kev, ran for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns as a rookie last year. All season.
Yeah, and those are obviously notable, Eddie, but the ones that really stand out to me are the guys that have been doing it for a while, like Fields and Lawrence. We're talking their career games when they have, what is Fields, 40, 50 starts?
Yeah.
Lawrence, obviously that, go back to Mixon, his highest rushing total in 3 years. Josh Jacobs, his highest rushing total in 2 years. Okay, Bigsby and Thomas, whatever, they are young players in the league. But when these guys have now done the 3-4 years of it, and they're doing that to you, that would lead me, as Jim Irsay or Chris Ballard, to question some things.
Last 3 games, the secondary has given up 1,046 passing yards. That is 348.7 per game, average of 12.6 yards per completion, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks, one of those being gifted from Trevor Lawrence.
2 more items on the defense. One, the big plays are not supposed to happen. That's a core belief they pride themselves in. So yesterday, 3 plays of over 60 yards. ugly. And then lastly, you need more out of Latu. You need more out of Dayo Dengbo. Those are individual rushers that I didn't think Jacksonville beat you rush-wise off of broken down communication or stunts. I thought they kind of just whipped you in some one-on-one moments. You'd like to see that from Latu. And I mean, the Colts still started 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and Grover Stewart on their D-line.
Latu has 9 total tackles for the year. 6 of those came yesterday. 2 quarterback hits, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 pass deflection.
How many do they list pressures?
No.
I'd be curious what his pressure total is. But yeah, certainly you need more. Way too quiet from your 15th overall pick.
Let's transition now to the offense, unless you have anything else you want to add on the defense.
No, I would say the other thing I really didn't like from yesterday, I just thought your offense was too one-dimensional.
Yep.
You know, again, I at the end of the day, do you sign up for 34 points? Of course you do. But that lull there, Eddie, from the opening drive to the start of the fourth quarter, that was a 38, 40-minute period where you scored 3 points. Why? I just thought you were too one-dimensional.
Yes.
I thought you had a couple drops in there, too, but I just thought offensively, I think at one point, I know Sermon had the big run late when they were kind of in prevent, but he had 9 for 20 up until that point. Obviously, that's not a winning formula there. Goodson busted 1 there, but that right at the gut, but really that was it for him in terms of an efficient run day there. So, numbers get skewed, like, a Flacco scramble for 21, which, by the way, I do remember in training camp being like, oh, damn, Flacco was a lot faster than Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers. He would easily win a race of all those people. That gets a little skewy from a run game standpoint. So
skewy.
Just way too one-dimensional. And in general, I think your offense just lacks a little dynamic element, certainly without Taylor and without Richardson in there from a run game. So too many of those just drives just didn't – you weren't able to move it really, and you certainly weren't able to end in points there. After that opening touchdown drive, you went punt, you got the field goal then, you had the late half fumble, and then you had punt, those first 2 drives of the third quarter. And at that point, the lead changed from 7-0 to 20-10. So – yes, the offense, if you're going to say, well, who do you blame more for the loss? Well, certainly you blame the defense, but still, you would like to have seen a little bit more there in those middle quarters to where you're not saying, oh, here's a 3rd and 15 prayer to Mo Alley Cox. Here's, these deep shots to Alec Pierce that are desperately needed to try and get back in the game.
Yeah, I thought, especially early, they didn't even try to run the football at all. That first drive was pretty much all passing, and I like how they got Downs involved, but out of that first drive, there was really not much involvement with Josh Downs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you couldn't, yes, I would agree with you. They obviously were trying to kind of manufacture a run game with their pass, but then that kind of went away too. For how great you were with that quick rhythm early on, you could not sustain that.
Let's transition now to what you did like, and we will start with Alec Pierce.
One of the more impressive individual quarters I've ever seen. I mean,
on 2 drives.
I hate to speak in hyperbole, but those 3 catches, I mean, I thought the best catch of all of them was the first one. We kind of volleyballed it to himself there and stayed in bounds.
Yeah.
And that got it going. And then for him to have the stamina, then was it the very next play that
yes.
he runs the deep route? I mean, that's kind of wild to me that Pierce can do that. I felt like they should have gave him the touchdown too, but they did not do that. Sermon then punches it in, and then sure enough, he gets the 65-yarder there after that. So, unbelievable from Pierce. It's a shame how the game ended that we won't remember it more. And that happens with losses, but it is a shame because what a performance from him there in the fourth quarter. Now, I think you do need to target him more. I mean, I remember saying this last year. Pierce, to me, needs a deep ball target once a half.
Agreed.
And I think you got an uptick right now. A.D. Mitchell had 7 targets and 19 snaps. I get that Mitchell impacts the game in a little bit other areas, but I feel like, especially on a day when you knew your big plays would be limited, i.e., hey, we might need to do a throwback from A.D. Mitchell to Tyler Goodson, and that worked beautifully, of course. You might need to find ways to create more big plays. Because, Eddie, we're approaching the moment with these DBs. They're going to start panicking with Pierce. Down the field, they're going to be so nervous being like, guys, he catches everything. We got to try and contact them. Well, when you do that and you're on an island out there, oftentimes they're going to throw those flags. So,
no hurries, by the way, for Leal Tulatu against Jacksonville.
oh, okay. What's he got for the season?
6.
And what do they list pressures? I know pressures and hurries can kind of be similar, but
8 total pressures.
not the season. Yeah.
3 against Pittsburgh, 3 against Chicago, 2 against Houston.
Pressure numbers decent, but certainly you need more impact than just that Caleb Williams sack. So Pierce deserves mention, man.
He needs at least 1 goal ball every game. 1.
No, he needs more. Yeah,
That's why I said at least 1.
Yeah, I mean, he needs more. It's just because it forces corners to respect him. It forces defenses to respect him. Forces a safety to respect him.
Opens things up for the middle of the field for Michael Pittman Jr.
Right, like I think they were trying to hit it there at the end. If I'm not, I'd have to go back and look, but I think on that final series, so Jacksonville kicks the field goal. That first play, they had Pierce bottom of the screen throwing the go ball.
Yeah,
the go, and Pittman was kind of on a big drag. And, Downs and him were kind of in the middle of the field together, and,
That looked a little convoluted and a little messed up.
But, I like that thought process. Pierce clears out the field, and Pittman or Downs, now, again, there should be levels to them. They're able to make a play there underneath. So, job well done from Alec Pierce, certainly. That was quite a special few plays there.
And then the quarterback throwing in the football, Joe Flacco, but specifically what you liked about Flacco was how he started the game and how he ended the game.
I thought a very commendable performance from Flacco. Now, certainly Jacksonville is one of the worst pass defenses in the league, but still, I mean, for a backup quarterback to give you that out of the gate, that was a key start. You couldn't maintain it, but still, I thought that was a really nice start. And then, obviously, the finish, he's willing to give those guys chances. I thought the Mo Alley Cox 3rd and 15 was a bit risky. But still, I mean, he's able to give his guy a chance. And then, obviously, he gives Pierce those chances. I would like to see a little bit more in the middle of the game. But all in all, for a backup quarterback to give you that, there are no complaints you can have. I mean, super, super commendable from Flacco. Again, on a day when he's dealing with a backup running back and a backup center as well. And I thought job well done from the 39-year-old.
2 things I want to add, 1 in each category. Earlier, I meant to bring this up in terms of what I didn't like. Braden Smith, I thought he was horrible yesterday. I thought it was one of the worst games that he's had in a long time.
Yeah, I am. I'm curious if we're now kind of in maintenance mode with
his knee.
Yeah, he only practiced 1 day
each of the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so he stifled TJ Watt, right?
Yep.
Watt is a little bit more of the speed rusher. Traylon Walker, power. I mean, you saw power get the best of him yesterday. So is that something to watch now with the knee moving forward? I think that is something to keep an eye on there. But, yeah, that is probably something I could have put in the did not like category.
We've pretty much talked about every offensive lineman but one over the course of the 5 weeks now on this season, and that's Bernhard Raimann. This is one guy we haven't talked about. I thought he's had a good start to the season, and the fact that we haven't talked about him speaks largely how well he's played.
Yeah, and I guess if we could maybe just here insert the Will Fries talk. Just awful scene. You hate it. I mean, it's wild to see an injury that leads to a surgery in that city. I mean, he spent the night in Jacksonville last night. Right tibia was what it was there. And he's a guy we just don't talk about enough. Great find by Chris Ballard in round 7. I've always been a believer that I would argue multiple of your interior offensive line spots need to come from day 3 picks, just financially. I just think it makes sense.
Yeah.
And Fries is the poster child of that. He's grown into a really, really nice player. He's durable. I know he suffered this injury, but I think he played the second most snaps of anybody on the team last season. And it just sucks that it's in a contract year. So they'll opt for some youth. We'll see how it'll go. It was Dalton Tucker yesterday, the undrafted free agent, who looks about 40. He went into the game.
He had a really good camp and preseason, right?
Right. Do you put Bortolini over there when Ryan Kelly comes back? That is a potential option. He maybe is not as big of a body as a Tucker. Matt Gonzalez, does he get a look if he can drill there for an entire week? There was some thought there. He could be maybe a swing tackle guard. So just some things to keep an eye on. But, really the Colts have not had, I'm trying to think of the last time, Eddie, the Colts had the season-ending O-line injury early in the year.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Obviously Braden Smith's been off and on at times, and Ryan Kelly a little bit, but they haven't had that. And so that'll be something for them now to deal with here in week 6.
One final note. This was game 3 without Buckner, right? So he's got one more game at least on injured reserve, and then he's eligible to return?
Yep. Yeah, Dolphins for him. I've kind of always thought, that Texans game, you obviously, right now you're in the boat of circling all these games, but, the Texans one is, certainly the biggest, if you could label them all. Granted, they all need to be big at this point, but yeah, that would be that week. And, they haven't put Pay or Kenny Moore on IR yet, or they didn't do it, I should say. So they've both missed 2 weeks, so you would think their returns would be coming soon. Ryan Kelly's missed 5 straight practices. And I think I hinted at this on Wednesday's pod to you, Eddie. I was like, Anthony Richardson barely did anything at practice. And then certainly I talked about it on the show Thursday and Friday as I got to see more practice. Don't think for one second Anthony Richardson was a game-time decision. Like, it was clear Joe Flacco was going to be this team's quarterback about midweek.
Just some gamesmanship that the Colts were doing there?
Some Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love gamesmanship. Remember during that Colts week?
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur took it all the way up. And again, this is me. Why did Matt LaFleur do that? Why did Shane Steichen do that? To put seeds of doubt into the opponent.
At least I think there was more realistic seeds of doubt with Richardson compared to Jordan Love.
Right, but again, Flacco was taking the walkthrough reps on Wednesday. Yes, okay, a little bit more realistic, but at the end of the day, you do that to try and impact the preparation of your opponent.
Oh, yeah.
And this gets back to my issue with the Colts defense. If you rank the defensive coordinators and who causes stress for you to get ready for, Gus Bradley and the Colts would rank near the bottom of the NFL. And that's why I've always been confused why a Shane Steichen, it did not shock me at all. He played the game he did last week with Richardson publicly, because that's who he is. He believes in all of that preparation, antics and all those, little things that he thinks can create an advantage. But yet defensively, they don't do that. Why?
Makes no sense.
So we'll see where Richardson is this week. Do you make anything of him not being the emergency quarterback either?
I think it was just them being cautious, probably, and for his own good.
We've seen Russell Wilson, for example, dress when supposedly hurt as that third QB.
We've also seen Russell Wilson dress inactive, so there's that as well. So
we certainly have seen Sam Ehlinger be the third QB here to start the season. So again, if you made me guess right now, I think he gives it a go, but certainly some things to watch this week.
Are you ready for Twitter questions?
Let's do them.
We've got 6 to get to. We will start with Jake. Is it too much for the offense to ask to not score 30 plus to win a game?
Can you imagine presenting to Shane Steichen the night before the game? Here's 34 points with Flacco, Sermon, and Bortolini.
Yeah.
And you lose.
Sign me up. Well, not for the loss part, but yeah.
And you know what? Defense, that's just hard, but boy, man, that punt return was a big play by Duvernay. That was a huge play.
Oh, yeah.
In that game. So I'll throw that in there, but this is what I keep on coming back to. Again, I'm sitting there being like, well, second and third quarter, you only scored 3 points. And yeah, I think it's fair to point that stuff out. And you know me, I'm always let's empty it all here on a Monday morning.
That's right.
But damn, they scored 34. That should be enough. Period.
Big Bama is up next. Some people are starting to get impatient with A.D. Mitchell, even though he's only played 5 games in his career. And seems like he's avoiding to make a play at some throws because he doesn't want to take a potential big hit. Do you think what you have seen, it's some concern this outside of some drops that he's had?
So we touched on this a little bit midweek last week, Eddie, and I asked Shane Steichen, this maybe would have been after the Green Bay game, about finishing routes and, things like that. He didn't really commit to anything. I guess I feel the need to maybe ask it again. I was surprised how much he played. I know it was only 19 snaps, but boy, it didn't seem like they targeted him a ton, compared to some of these other guys.
That was a season high for him in receptions, yards, and targets. I think he had 7 targets, 4 receptions, 38 yards, and then he had the 24-yard pass completion as well in the 3 or 4 yards on the end around again.
So Pittman played 62 snaps. 62 of 70, that is. Mitchell played 19, and Pittman had 1 more target than Mitchell. And he played 43 more snaps than him. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, that is wild. As far as Mitchell, I see people bring up, Marvin Harrison went down, T.Y. Hilton went down. Well, yeah, they also caught the football.
Yeah.
And then they went down. And I get that. And I think that's a decent call. There are many times I see wideouts in the open field carrying it so loosely, and I'm like, dude, just get down. Like, you're right now thinking that you're going to all of a sudden bust one and break one. It's like, hey, man, just live with a 32-yard gain and be happy that you got that, not trying to make it, 42.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've thought a lot about Mitchell in the last week or so because, again, I mentioned to you yesterday, Eddie, 182 out of 182, or last week I should say, in catch percentage, but I remain optimistic because he can get open. And I still feel that way.
Yeah.
But Reggie Wayne's got to have a combo with the kid because that stab at the right, a stab at the ball there over the middle of the field, I get that, that is a shot play. But Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce attack that ball much differently. I'd argue Josh Downs attacks that ball differently than Mitchell did there. And so I go back to Texas. He did not have many contested catches at all in his college career. He was one of the worst yards after catch guys in college. Is any of this playing into what we're seeing here?
Maybe there was some of this on film that is part of also the reason why that he dropped.
Wasn't like a, break a tackle guy. And if you go back to the draft process last year, Eddie, I said to you quite often, okay, what do you want in a wideout? And I said, I don't care about height. I don't care about size. Get me Yak. Like, to me, in today's NFL, where it is hard to get behind defenses with, seemingly everybody trying to keep in front of you, I think those types of guys that are dynamic with the ball in their hands is really the Deebo Samuels of the world. Now, again, they all come in different shapes and sizes.
Jamar Chase yesterday takes a screen 65 yards in the end zone.
Sure. I mean, that's what, to me, is really special. Now, AD has shown a special trait in creating separation, without question. So now it becomes finishing this off. But, yeah, I mean, how do you not watch that and label them as business decisions or alligator arms or all those phrases to me, I think are very fine ways to describe it. They're harsh, but tell me that you're seeing anything otherwise.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'll try and find a way to ask Shane Steichen about it, and we'll see. I can't imagine anything. But, yeah, Reggie Wayne's got to have a chat. And if you remember at Texas, too, like what stood out to me, and I guess when I say Texas, I mean Georgia as well, he had the 5 touchdowns in the college football playoff game. Crazy note, in my opinion. I mean, that is like, on those stages, he did that. But I think if you combine those 5 games, I want to say he had like 7 total catches besides the touchdown grabs. What I'm getting at, he was never a big catch guy. He wasn't like a 6 for, 80 on a consistent basis. He was more of a 2, 3, 4 catch guy. Is this some of that? Again, I'm kind of looking for the whys behind it because I'd rather offer an explanation than just be like, oh, those are business decisions. But right now, I think all of these are fair questions that are being asked.
Would you consider benching him to send him a message? And to send the team a message as well?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. 19 snaps ain't a ton, but boy, 7 targets is a lot. I don't think I'm outright benching him, but like right now, if I'm Shane Steichen, I'd probably do this. Reggie, you loved him. You wanted him. Figure it out. And then if I have to take a step further, then we do maybe need to flat out bench him. Like, I mean, has Anthony Gould really been relegated to like being benched for a coaching decision and not bringing it out of the end zone? Because that's what it looks like from that Chicago game. Is there a bit of a double standard here with Mitchell and with Gould here? So I don't know. Let's go with Reggie Wayne's words first and then benching second.
Okay, so to your point about AD not being a big catch guy, his last season at Texas, he had 3 games with 6 or more catches, the rest 3 or fewer. In the Sugar Bowl, he had 4. So.
And I understand Xavier Worthy, and like obviously Texas has a very decorated skill group, but like that was a bit of a trend we saw.
That is 10 games in the regular season with 3 or fewer catches compared to the 3 with 6 or more.
And I think I did the exercise like I looked at Worthy, I looked at Keon Coleman, a lot of these wideouts that were taken in and around that area, and for the most part, all of them had more catches than him. So again, all of this is just a little bit of the why.
Cameron is next. I'm finally climbing onto the fire Gus Bradley bandwagon, but does that even help? The defense was built for this scheme, and that seems built to help opposing quarterbacks be efficient.
Read that last part again, Eddie.
The defense was built for this scheme that seems built to help opposing quarterbacks be efficient.
Spot on. Cameron, spot effing on. Yeah, I mean, you give them the opportunity to get comfortable.
And some of the personnel decision-making was a head-scratching because I didn't think Dallas Flowers really warranted any snaps because Samuel Womack played pretty well against
people
Pitt.
have asked me what changes would you make. I would just play Womack the whole time right now. I mean, Flowers, God bless him, man. But again, a year removed from the Achilles. I'm not going there. But, focus on the scheme right here. We're going to give you the opportunity to get comfortable. And, who knows? Will Levis probably will take advantage of that. But, Will Levis is going to have that opportunity coming up. They don't contest enough on the perimeter. Again, the pressure's not enough. And when you do that, you let that quarterback decide his fate.
Yeah.
Whereas I want to be in control of impacting that fate more than they're doing. And I think you saw it on Sunday. It wasn't like Lawrence didn't set the world on fire in the first half, but he got to halftime as I'm trying to look up here what is he was 15 of 18 at halftime. Oh gosh, that was a hell of a first half. Now that I think about it, I keep on forgetting that he had the 85-yarder in there. He started the game 9-10, and then boom, I've got confidence. I'm gonna hit the Brian Thomas ball. I'm gonna hit the Christian Kirk ball. And look, I'm not gonna ignore injuries. The injuries are there, but again, I'm watching Sunday Night Football last night, and they're listing all these people for Dallas that are out, Parsons and Lawrence and et cetera, and boom, in a quiet passing night for Justin Fields, attempts wise, 3 sacks, 8 hits, and he didn't even throw it as much as Lawrence did.
Oh goodness, I just realized this. So the first half stats for Lawrence, as you said, 15 of 18, 225 yards. Those 225 were a season high in the first half.
Gosh, makes you want to vomit, man.
3 questions left. Logan says, I know everyone wants Anthony Richardson to play and everyone wants him to play good to find out a long-term quarterback option. But you, I, and everyone in that building knows Joe Flacco is the better quarterback right now. And if Shane Steichen starts Richardson, you could lose credibility as a head coach if you aren't playing the better player. A lot of these players might not be around for the long haul, and this team is ready to win now, and you might lose the locker room if you don't play Flacco. I know the long term is important, but you also have to show the fans, the players on the team, that the present does matter too. Your thoughts?
Logan, I appreciate the question. You certainly come from a viewpoint that I know some people have, and I think it's fine. I get where it's coming from. I think I said to you last week, Eddie, it's an awkward situation for the franchise to be in, and that they've committed to such a raw quarterback in the midst of a 30-year, their worst kind of playoff division title drought in 30 years. That draft pick said the present isn't going to matter for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that draft pick said. Whether the Colts said it as bluntly or directly as that, they obviously didn't. And that's some of the risks that you have to live with. In a way, Eddie, it's why I was all about trying to trade for the first overall pick. I want to be in control of that guy. I want to get, and I know you certainly were obsessed with C.J. Stroud.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be getting that guy that I think has got the, some combination of the highest ceiling, the least amount of development and work needed, marry that into the perfect package.
Right.
And certainly, your guy has been the poster child of that. And so you're just in a weird spot now. You are in a weird spot. And where does Flacco get you?
It's a good point.
You won 7 with Jacoby Brissett. You won 11 with Phillip Rivers. You won 9 with Carson Wentz. You won not a lot with Matt Ryan. You won 9 with Gardner Minshew.
Yep.
But, 7, 9, 11. I mean, those aren't. If I told you right now the Colts would win 9 with Flacco, what would you say? That's
cool. That's not what I
right,
signed
but
up for.
You would say that's realistic, right?
Yeah,
or possible.
Yeah.
Where does that get you? It's Band-Aid on the bullet wound.
It's like the Pacers. For all those years they wanted to be, fighting for playoff contention, and you're having average to subpar players that are getting you there, but you're not replenishing with any youth to take that next step, and then all of a sudden they commit to the full rebuild. They go younger, and now look at the Pacers.
And I want to be very clear. I don't want to laugh off these questions because I understand where they're coming from. I get that there are different fans. There are fans that live in a week-to-week reality, and there are other fans that live in more of a big-picture reality. So I totally understand that. And I get if you are frustrated, and you should be right now as a fan. Like, you haven't won a Week 1 game in a decade plus. You haven't won in Jacksonville in a decade. All these other teams have won the division. You haven't. If you're a season ticket holder, a home playoff game is, I would argue, is probably 70-80% of the reason why you want to be a season ticket holder.
Yes.
Experience those moments.
Oh, yeah.
And you haven't gotten that now in, 10. It'll be 10 years in January. That's a long, long time. I've done the exercise before. 25 teams have won a division title since you last have?
Yep.
I think it's 21 have won a playoff game since you last have. I get where people come from on this. But again, you as a franchise sent a message in 2023 with drafting Richardson 4th overall. And pulling the plug on him 7 starts in, to me, is not giving that enough of a chance. The potential of developing a young quarterback, to me, is more important than a season that's either 7 wins or 9 wins.
Yeah.
Just to boil it down to something simple, that's it. If you were Philly and you pulled the plug, because, the Peyton 98 analogy, I could go there and just shut up and move on.
Yeah.
And, whatever. But, I get that that's a far-fetched analogy. So even though that's the easy one for me to cherry pick, I'm not going to go there. What if Philly pulled it on Jalen Hurts 7 starts in?
No kidding.
What if Buffalo pulled it on Josh Allen 7 starts in? And those are more of the present-day comps that I think we use for Richardson. And so that's the question. It's fine to have questions for at this point of Anthony Richardson's career. I certainly have them. I think I've laid this out on this podcast. But to me, pulling that for Flacco in 2024, I think the short-term gain is very much of the, hey man, that one night stand might stay with you forever.
Nice pull there.
That's kind of how I view it. So, if you go 9-8 with Flacco, are you doing this every year? Like, are you going to go? What if Flacco says, yeah, this is great. Love to have my family here, but I'm going to retire. Well, he's about to turn 40. I think I would understand that. So what are you doing next year? If Richardson hits a little speed bump like he's hit here.
Yeah.
Are you then going to the Band-Aid again? You've done Band-Aid, and I certainly come from a belief of sustained success.
Yes.
How do you create the 5 to 7 year window? And again, Buffalo and Baltimore and Kansas City, those teams have done it. And there was an element of quarterback patience that all of them had that I think you at least have to attempt. And there's a fine line. I get you want to find the answer on your franchise quarterback as quickly as possible too.
Yeah. Because
the longer you wait, that could delay, your building approach. And Logan, I'm not going to deny it. It's awkward. A lot of your prime players are getting close to the age of 30, if not there. And it makes it weird, but it's a reality of where you're at. So I hear the Flacco chatter. I understand it, but I don't agree with him.
Do you recall what the season win total from Vegas was for the Colts last season? Was it 5.5?
I thought it was 4.5. I think I went, it might have been 5.5. I know I went with 7. And I remember being gosh, I don't know if I should do that. I think it was 5.5. I say 8.5 this year, right?
Yeah. 8.5, 9.5, depending on the book. Now, I bring that up to ask you this question. Was last season a little bit of a fairy tale because of Gardner Minshew starting, and we should have been more realistic about them being closer to the 5.5 projected win team a year ago when Vegas and whomever was predicting the Colts schedule, wins, losses, whatever, assuming Richardson started the entirety of the season?
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up. I also thought this schedule was heavily front-loaded. Now, I don't think it's necessarily played out in that manner of Malik Willis for Jordan Love, for example. You aren't going to see Tua here, coming up. It's going to be Scoop Huntley, I assume, out of the bye. Tua can't come back is what I'm getting at. He's on injured reserve. So, can you backdoor your way into this season a bit? Can you be 4-7 at one point and then win, 5 your last 6? I don't even know if that would add up to the amount of games, but something along that end. But yeah, I thought in general, to answer your question, Eddie, I was just guys, this schedule's tougher than last year. That's kind of how I boiled it down. So, but we'll see how it plays out.
2 questions left. Samsonite, that's a badass name, by the way. Samsonite says, I was this close to putting away the torch and pitchfork, and then today happens, but this has to be as close to rock bottom as possible for Gus Bradley. What's the change or several changes needed in your mind to even get this defense above a level of detriment?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess I mentioned to you earlier, Eddie, like...
The cop-out answer could be health.
Yeah, but I would play Samuel Womack for the entire game instead of Dallas Flowers, for example. And that includes when Kenny comes back.
Yeah.
I guess I would move Lamons to the bench more. I think you have to have a decision. You could leave Kenny outside and play Lamons in the slot, or you could put Kenny inside and put Womack outside. I guess that's what I would do. I think, there are ways to, manufacture more of a pass rush than yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, Eddie, Trevor Lawrence was pulled off the ground one time, and that was after a QB sneak.
Yeah.
34 times he dropped back.
Uh-huh.
No hits, no sacks. And this is a guy that had been hit and had been sacked a decent amount through the first 4 weeks. So I would say one thing I'm a little worried about in terms of 2024 changes. I mean, this is now a couple of games where the tackling has been really alarming.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of your go-to guys.
EJ Speed had the missed tackle on Take Bigsby on the touchdown run.
EJ Speed didn't get the NFL record because of some of those missed tackles yesterday.
Yeah, he had seven total.
Yeah, I guess he didn't set it by himself. It stays with him and Zach Thomas there. So, yes, Eddie, I would say this. As you wait to get healthier, i.e., Quiddy back, Kenny back, like you said, Buckner's got a couple more weeks on IR, can you kind of manufacture in other ways? But on paper, and we'll focus on this more Wednesday, Levis in Tennessee, Huntley and Miami, that screams Bryce Young, Carolina, Mac Jones, New England from last year.
Yeah.
It screams like you have an opportunity. Now, I will stress on paper a lot. I will say this. Carolina and New England at those points last season, they were the definition of dysfunction.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Tennessee and Miami are quite there. Tennessee just won a game.
I mean, hell, you faced a dysfunction team yesterday and they scored 37 on you.
Touche. But what I'm getting at, Tennessee still has some skill talent.
Yeah.
And they've got defenders that, are some names. And Miami certainly has some skill talent. So, but on paper, their quarterback situation and their records, it screams a little bit of Carolina and New England those back-to-back weeks last year. Can you take advantage of it like you did last year?
Certainly, you've got a similar situation like that later in the year, week 13, 15, 16. You've got what looks to be now Drake May starting in New England, week 13, your bye week. Then you have Bo Nix, week 15 at Denver. And then week 16, Will Levis comes to town to Indianapolis. And then you have Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence.
Now the key is making those games matter.
Yes.
Because, again, there is an opportunity in December to do something. But you got to get there with a record that's at least within striking distance.
Trevor Lawrence, Mike DeRocco from ESPN Jacksonville had this, was pressured once on his 34 dropbacks. That was 2.9% pressure rate. That was the lowest in a game of his NFL career. The two lowest pressure rates in his career have come against Indianapolis. Pressured on 10% of his dropbacks in week 2 of the 2022 campaign. Final Twitter question is from Sam.
God, that is a horrifying one.
Or questions, I should say. Yes, very, very horrifying. Number 1, do the media put in requests to interview Chris Ballard during the season? If so, are they shot down?
So Ballard is, and this goes for most GMs around the league, he is not an in-season talker. And again, this is kind of how the NFL operates. There can't be more than a couple GMs that talk in season. Sometimes you'll get GMs that'll talk after a huge injury to a particular player, a big trade.
Yes.
They would talk as well. Now, Ballard has, and tonight would be the night. I'd be stunned if he did it. He has before done the quarterly updates on the Colts radio show on Monday nights.
He didn't do one last year.
Yeah, I want to say the last couple of years he either has just not done them or has been iffy on if he does them.
Right.
Again, Bill Polian used to do them every week. Ryan Grigson, I think, did the quarterly updates. Ballard at times has done it, but I don't know. Occasionally the GM will slide in there on a short week, on a Thursday night week. They'll do that as well. But I assume it'll be Shane Steichen.
Second part from Sam is, I wouldn't have brought back Gus in the offseason. Bottom 5 in points given up in both of his first 2 seasons. Now he's in the bottom 2 in a lot of major metrics. How bad does it actually need to get for Ballard to fire him? Not what you and I would need, but what would Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay need for an in-season firing? How about some accountability?
Yeah, Sam, I appreciate him asking the question in this manner because ultimately that's all that matters.
Accountability.
Now, again, I asked this question at the end of last season, why or will you bring him back? And then once he said, yes, we are, the follow-up was why, because 28th in points allowed each of the last 2 years. If you want to play the debate of pro Gus Bradley, you would say, well, 28th in points allowed with Matt Ryan at quarterback, he put us in some horrible situations, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's fair. There was a lot of turnovers. Gardner Minshew, there was not that. And right now, you're 25th in points allowed. And like I said earlier, Eddie, you've played one top half offense, and that was Green Bay, which I would argue Malik Willis is not Jordan Love. So just to reiterate that point. But how bad does it have to get? That is the fair question to ask here. I would think the continued embarrassment and the costing of games, like yesterday falls in the embarrassing reason for loss. If those double whammies continue, how can you ignore? That's me. And I think that's a little bit of them. Like, the embarrassment to me is just you and I both have done this at different times in the pod, Eddie. Again, Josh Jacobs' best game in 2 years, Joe Mixon's best game in 3 years, Trevor Lawrence career high, Justin Fields' the second career high. We're not talking about Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce coming in here and doing this.
No.
Or guys that, those guys are not this. None of these players are Hall of Famers or, even Pro Bowlers. So now the other side of it would be, okay, who on the staff would they turn to?
I have one of my buddies, Alec, who listens to the pod, lobbied this idea to me, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this. If they fired Gus, do you think they would consider bringing in Chuck Pagano as an overseer or some kind of, I don't know what the right term would be, or that he used, and then you elevate Cato June or somebody, a former player, to that spot, and then you let Chuck Pagano be an advisor? That was the word.
No. I think it would have to be somebody in the building that is somewhat used to it. At times, John Fox, was here as a senior analyst. It's weird how these teams operate with this. I mean, I think some Colts assistants passed it up a few years ago, but who ended up calling plays for Jeff Saturday? Parks Frazier.
Oh, offensively, yeah.
Yeah, remember, look at Purdue's situation right now. Purdue fires Graham Harrell. They go to a senior analyst, right? Or I forget what Jason Simmons' exact title was, but they go there for that. So, it's not what I'm getting at is Gus Bradley's assistants outside of Charlie Partridge, the new D-line coach. Those are his guys. Richard Smith and Ron Miles have been with him for decades. So, I don't know where you'd get this, great philosophical change. Unless Shane Steichen demands it, I don't know where you would. Now, what you would do is send a message. And again, that's where if I'm Jim Irsay, I need to have a sit down. And I'm printing off all of those historical notes that you just pointed out, and you and I have pointed out throughout this podcast. And I'm saying, wait a minute. We just scored 34 points with the backup quarterback, running back, and center.
Yeah.
And we lost? That to me explains it. So I guess to answer the question, Sam, the continued embarrassment would have to be there. But even then, I can't see it. I think guys like playing for Gus Bradley. He obviously was a Ballard guy turned Steichen. I mean, it's kind of weird. We can get more into this later. It's kind of weird. Ballard's theoretically hired both of these defensive coordinators, Matt Eberflus and now Gus Bradley, and they both have kind of been put on the next coach. I get that Shane Steichen had history with Gus Bradley there, but yeah, it would have to be continued embarrassment.
Richard Smith and Charlie Partridge do have experience as D coordinators, but it's been 10 plus years for both of them.
Smith NFL, Partridge not, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Smith last stop as a D coordinator was Atlanta 15 to 16, so I guess 8 years ago.
And that might have been an interim stint.
No, it doesn't say that was interim. It says defensive coordinator, yeah.
Okay.
He was also the D coordinator in Houston from 06 to 08, Miami in 05, and
gosh, now you're
that's
going
it.
Way back. All right. That's a bow tie on it. 2-3 Colts. Certainly the injuries will watch. I think Taylor would need multiple days this week. Again, he did not practice last week, and we'll certainly keep you updated on that Wednesday pod.
Steichen will talk today or this afternoon, Monday afternoon.
Yep,
and
we'll have some updates on the website, and
yep.
we'll be back Wednesday afternoon.
1075thefan.com.
Thank you, Eddie Garrison.